Okay, we are live on Facebook. We're live on Facebook, everyone, and this is 3 questions in 15 minutes. And what I'm going to do just before we kick off is share this into the Revolutionary Woman Global Group. Share to a group. I always like to narrate this out loud so that I know what I'm doing. Here we go. Okay, welcome everyone. I am live today. I'm Morna Haist, the founder of Revolutionary Woman Global, and I'm live today with actually one of my favorite people, Katerina Daniel, who is an executive leader working with the Canadian government out of Ottawa, Canada. I'm coming in from BC, so this is one of the Canadian editions of 3 Questions Live. And this is an experiment, a little adventure that I've been running this week with the women who were in our global dojo. And next month, you're going to get the opportunity to participate in this adventure, which basically involves 4 pieces. But the first piece is to jump on a live with me and answer 15 questions in 3 minutes.
Questions.
But, yeah, we're not doing the rapid fire round. Maybe that's next week.
The hot seat, yes.
That's the hot seat, like a very hot seat.
Mm-hmm.
So, Katerina, how did you get into your career? Tell us something about your career trajectory and how you've ended up where you are.
I took a very circuitous route. I don't think I ever imagined myself as a bureaucrat, but I actually entered into the public service because I was a single mom with 3 young children, and I wanted stability, and I wanted something that was more where I was going to have just basically stability and benefits and some predictability in my career. So when I did that, I was not a leader. I was, a comms analyst, an advisor in the trenches of a department. But I didn't stay in that role for very long. I think I became an executive within a couple of years of joining the public service. So most of my career in the public service has been as an executive. Very strange trajectory. And then I've had a lot of executive positions. What's that?
2 years feels like a pretty quick transition into executive leadership. Can you say a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, when I joined as an executive, I wasn't brand new in my professional career, so that helped. I mean, I think I was in my mid to late 30s maybe, and I was, I had some experience behind me, and I certainly had a lot of ideas, some philosophies that I was very centered on. So I think that helped me maybe, because what I found often was I had this cute little office in the corner where it was hidden away, and it was like this little safe haven, and people would seek me out to just come and tell me things and talk through issues. And I thought, oh, I guess people see me as somebody to provide advice and share some of my views with. And so that's how I gained confidence to become an executive.
I love that. Well, I love that. And I'm going to change my question and ask a different question based on that. I've been trying really hard to stick to the 3 questions. And I was saying in another one of these that I feel like a bit of a genie with, instead of 3 wishes, I've got 3 questions, and I'm trying to avoid using my questions within a thing. It's interesting to try and stick to the 3 questions. My next question is, what do you think it is about you or was about you that enabled people to come to you in this way?
I'm a pretty warm person, I think, when people approach me, and I tend to make friends fairly easily because I'm open and welcoming. So I think that was probably the first thing. And I was certainly not, I wasn't a bureaucrat in my heart. I was just a person. So I think those are probably 2 of the things that it helped people feel welcome in my little closet office. And
closet office, I can just picture it. Yeah,
it was so tiny. It was this cute little corner. But I think also I had different views than other people maybe in their life. And so,
Oh.
I would always ask questions that were different. And so that's probably part of the reason. And it was like wasn't like all the women came to me. I had like this assortment of people above me and people at my level and people who were young. So it was just, it was very, it was a judgment-free zone. And I think that's
Mm.
how I try to approach life and people.
Yeah, that's pretty rare, the judgment-free zone, and it's really, you can feel it. I'm curious. I bet that there was a bit of a grapevine whispering of like, okay, Katerina is the person you need to go and speak to about X, you know.
Or there were also
Uh,
grapevines that I was, in relationships with all of the people who are coming to my office. So I don't,
right, who's visiting her
like
closet.
it's a very like intimate space, and people would come in and cry and people would laugh and share like their personal stories. So it was a pretty, like, when I think back on that time, it was a very intimate space for a workspace.
Mm. It's so interesting. There's a parallel coming up for me. I didn't spend a lot of time in public service, but my first two real jobs were working in government in New Zealand, and I was working in the National Library of New Zealand, which is like the library for libraries, that holds all of the important things and whatnot. And we went through the kind of typical restructuring when the new government was coming in, and I mean, all those things I'm sure you're familiar with, like how things change and
Yes.
flow in those environments. And it was super interesting. Everybody in my team were made redundant. And then one of the senior leaders came to me and said, I just really like how you dress. And people seem, and it was really interesting. She said, people seem to like you. And then she said, look, I don't need an assistant. I'm required to have one, but I don't need one. What I want you to do is basically go around and chat with people all day and have your finger on the pulse of what people are really feeling. And I'm like, really, you're going to pay me to do that, and I get to yeah. So I relate to that. I guess that feeling of seeing people differently,
Mhm.
and cutting through some of the, I guess, the pretense and the barriers that we put between ourselves as humans.
Levels,
It,
right? Like in government setting, levels really can create this separation that's artificial and doesn't allow for getting to know people just as humans. So I still find that senior leaders come to me and say, how is the team doing? Because they know that right down to the students that are on our team, that I know how everybody's doing. And so they can get that pulse check with me that they may not be able to get from other executives.
wow, that's interesting. I've got like 4 or 5 different like final questions kind of branching off right now. And it does seem like you're a bit of a unicorn in the system that you're working in. Um, how does the system respond to you, and how do you get a? I was gonna, actually, the question I want to ask is, how do you get away with being in this way in a system that it seems largely kind of almost inhospitable to this way of being, or maybe that's just a judgment that I'm making.
Well, it is inhospitable in many ways. It's certainly not a natural fit. And I guess I get away with it by just carving out my own space. And I have to always stay very centered on the values that are important to me in my work. And
Mm.
so I carve out and create jobs around who I am and how I want my team to function, rather than all the demands that I see out there. I try to look at those demands more through the lenses that are meaningful to me. And so that's generally how so most senior leaders, like if you were to ask the big deputy ministers in the government of Canada, they wouldn't know who I was, but certainly the people who have worked with me would know my name, would know my reputation. And so that's the difference. I'm not really looking for the kind of recognition that most people who are executives are looking for to advance their careers. Um, I think, and that's not a judgment. I just think I'm quite different in how I approach ambition, and how I find job satisfaction. So it's, I create my own reality. It's not always, it certainly isn't a natural fit, but I've been very, very fortunate to find managers and leaders who value what I bring to the table.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And since I'm about to give myself permission to ask a fourth and final question, because we have a couple of minutes left. So this is 4 questions with executive
It's your
leader
show.
Katerina Daniel. Yeah, thank you very much. That's right. I'm leaning into what you just said, which I find so interesting as someone who, like you, has spent many years in the transformation space and the space of wishing to lead change. And for me, I've always been concerned with or cognizant of where's the best place to position my unique set of skills to create the change that I believe I'm here to make. And I've been in systems for sure. I'd say at this point, I'm technically unemployable, pretty much. I know I am, in a good way. I don't mean that I could get a job if I wanted to, but no thanks. I prefer my own show, literally. It's curious to me how you've been able to carve out this space in the system that you're in. And it seems like something that I want to underscore, because I know a lot of folks who are in systems and are kind of entrepreneurs in the systems that they're in. And I think it can be challenging to measure success when you aren't following the typical trajectory or expectations of that organization. So I guess really the question I want to ask is, how do you stay sane and able to show up as the leader that it's quite obvious that you are and want to be?
Well, thank you, first of all. How do I stay sane? I honestly, it's a lot of self-work every day, every morning. I do have stress. So I tend to take on stressful jobs in very ambiguous situations, environments. So I have to work harder to stay very centered and focused on what is it that I'm bringing to the table? How is my perspective unique, and how do I leverage that? In the end, what's interesting though is I always meet all of the performance markers, and I've exceeded them many times as well. And so it's not ever about what my production is like in the course of a year at all. But I value the how I do that. I'm never worried about whether I can hit the targets. I'm always concerned about how we hit the targets.
Oh, wow. Okay, we're doing this again.
So time for a quick question.
Well, yeah. There's so much more there. There's so much more there, and I'm super fascinated by it. And I think that one of the aims that I have with this series, and also with when I open this up to a broader audience, is really highlighting the multitude of ways that we can go about creating what we're here to do, making the change that we want to make. And this idea of focusing on the how feels so important to me. And I'm reading between the lines there, that is involving a lot of the people and how people are and how they feel, and which is such it's really curious to me how, organizations are made up of people, but often that is not on the table.
Well, we often are very transactional in our work and not interactional. So when you're transacting, you're just trying to get a product or a result. But when you're interacting, you are concerned about the how and who and why, but the human factors that are part of that conversation.
Okay, well, I'm just going to announce right now that we're going to do a follow-up video, and then talk about this concept of interactional versus transactional, because I think this is key. I think it's something that people are yearning for. I mean, you know, work is we spend so much time in these spaces. Okay, I'm going to stop now because I could literally go for the next hour with you. In fact, I think we should just stay here all day and chat.
The government of Canada calls.
The government of Canada is calling you, and my people are calling me. In closing, what's one thing? This is 5 questions now. What's one thing that you would say to somebody who is working in a job right now and they're not feeling valued, they're not feeling seen? What's something you would say to that person who might be watching this replay?
I think what's worked for me, at least, is centering my growth targets, my self-growth targets, on things that are really meaningful to me, and making the external growth targets maybe a little less prominent in my perspective, in my, you know, when I'm looking out to the horizon, my first 5 targets are all about how I show up and how I grow. And then I can get to what needs to be delivered. It doesn't always work, and it doesn't mean that every workplace will allow for it, but go and find it, because it's worth finding the leaders who will value that. Because leaders who value that also know the productivity will always be like, it's a no question, it'll happen. The how is what is the most meaningful, because you never have to go searching for humans to help you. Like, my teams are always there. I never have to worry about losing people until it's time for them to go. I'm not like worried about sending people off because they're frustrated. So I think that's part of it, is just keep your growth and your reasons, your why, really front and center.
Thank you so much. Like, a deep bow to you, Katerina, and for the work that you're doing within what is a really important system within the Canadian landscape and any country's landscape. And it's really refreshing and hopeful to hear you talking in this way, and to know that there are folks like you making differences, showing up in these systems. And I want to honor that. Thank you so much for your time today. That was 5 questions with Executive Leader Katerina Daniel. I will be back tomorrow with another 3 to 5 questions with someone else. Thank you so much, Katerina. Yeah.
Bye, Morna.
Bye, love.